Hello, my name is Emily, and today I will be doing a deep dive on ocean current turbines, also known as OCTs. To start, it's important to understand what an OCT is. Essentially, an ocean current turbine is a type of turbine that harnesses energy from deep ocean currents. It's important to note that OCTs are still in prototype phases and has not been deployed or currently active. However, the closest active real-world example we have to an OCT is a tidal turbine. The important difference between these two turbines is that a tidal turbine uses currents from the tidally influenced water bodies. So, are these basically the same thing? No, the differences matter. OCTs are in deep water, exposed to higher pressures and salinity levels, making it susceptible to corrosion and other things that we will be discussing during this PowerPoint. How these OTCs work is relatively unique compared to what currently exists. These turbines have a coin-shaped disc that supports a rotor and magnets, and the rotors are turned by the rushing ocean current water. Outside of the housing holds the magnets and eliminates the need for a gearbox and shaft. But why is this special? Well, unlike a wind turbine, the lack of a gearbox and shaft allows for easier repairs and increased operation time. Continuing with how these OCTs work, two coin-like discs are placed together and spin in opposite directions. This creates an equal and opposite force that allows the turbine to remain in place in the water column with rushing water. So, what does this look like? This is what the turbine currently looks like. To maintain the turbine's location, the turbine would be attached to the seafloor using a mooring system that fits both the water's profile and sedimentary profile. Essentially, the system would allow the turbines to fly like kites, capturing the flow in the water column. This brings us to the Gulf Stream energy opportunity. A study conducted by the U.S. Department of Energy in conjunction with Florida Atlantic University showed that deploying these turbines off the Florida coast and into the Gulf Stream has the potential to produce the equivalent of 2 to 3 nuclear power plants of energy. There are no active ocean current test facilities that exist globally. However, the study continues to note that some locations may not be suitable or ideal due to the distance between the Gulf Stream and land. One other location, where the Gulf Stream is close to land and may serve as a secondary location within the United States, is North Carolina. If the energy from Florida is paired with the energy produced off North Carolina, the resulting electricity has the potential to power 15 million homes. With Florida's proximity to the Gulf Stream, the Palm Beach location serves as an ideal spot to run tests and implement this energy source. The potential of the Gulf Stream opportunity allows for a new energy source that would be abundant, predictable, and consistently available. This developing technology causes a decrease in greenhouse gas emissions by contributing to the reduction of fossil fuels. Additionally, Florida could greatly benefit from this technology in one of the hardest seasons of the year, hurricane season. These turbines act as a type of generator and bring power to essential services and aid in post-disaster recovery. So, this is a great idea. What could possibly go wrong? Well, let's see. We start off with a thriving offshore ecosystem. Then, the turbine is constructed and deployed. While this image is not exactly what it would look like, the turbine would be suspended in the water column attached to the sediment with a mooring line and underwater cables to direct the energy back to shore. These actions cause an initial disruption to the sediment, which can disrupt benthic organisms' foraging habits and predation. However, over time, once the electrical cable is buried, the ecosystem will recover and a potential artificial reef may form on the mooring lines. With an artificial reef comes life. This leads to the next potential issue of biofouling. Biofouling is when organisms such as barnacles or algae form on undesirable hard substrates, such as the turbine itself. This can throw off the balance, slow the rotor's rotation down, and decrease operational output and require frequent cleaning. Additionally, when the sediment resettles, plant matter can get tangled into the rotors, and if this technology has any aspect of it above water, biofouling and defecation may also become an issue. The next aspect would be acoustic pollution. For organisms such as whales, there have been documented disturbances in behavior due to this form of pollution. Additionally, the sounds this turbine produces may have an attraction, repelling, or communication masking effect for some highly migratory species, such as bluefin tuna. Let's not forget to mention that we would essentially be putting a blender in an important migratory ocean current. So, with that, what can possibly go wrong? Well, I'm kidding. Kind of. There was a study conducted on collision risks that showed no observed foraging fish collisions. However, the same couldn't be said for jellyfish that go wherever the current takes them. So, remember how this device actually works and looks like? Part of the system involved two rotors and magnets. Well, these magnets alter the natural magnetic field within the water column. For organisms that utilize the magnetic field for migration, such as sea turtles, this can become a problem. These turbines can even affect human activities above the water, such as commercial fishing operations and cargo ship route disruptions. The area may become excluded and marked as a type of no-go zone that affects maritime traffic. With that being said, over time, the system will still be a promising source of green energy with a strong ecosystem. But how do we even know that all these issues exist? Well, using ocean energy is not a new concept, and data can be pulled from a variety of sources. This includes wind energy, tidal turbines, and even global sea telecommunication networks. Pulling from data that already exist, we will first look at wind energy. Information and data collected from offshore wind farms shows the cables that transport the energy can attract electroreceptive predators. Studies also show an initial decrease in benthic biodiversity pre-construction, then raises again with artificial reformations. Offshore wind energy studies have also noted corrosion rates in different geographical locations, which raises concern for the turbine itself and the long-term marine environmental exposure impacts. When looking at tidal turbines, organism displacement shows the effects of attraction, avoidance, and exclusion behaviors. A notable turbine in Scotland, developed by one particular company, showed that within certain turbine speeds, the presence of seals in the area decrease in comparison to non-operational periods. This can raise concerns in predator-prey relationships. Continuing into global subsea telecommunication networks, an uncommon observation arises. The carbon from the atmosphere sequesters into the ocean and settles into the sediment. One particular study assesses the impacts of cables on sedimentary carbon stocks. The results indicate that globally, in depths up to 2,000 meters, up to 2.8 to 11.26 metric tons of carbon has been disrupted within the sediment due to burying these telecommunication cables. Ocean energy, also referred to as blue energy, requires the electricity produced to go back to land. This is done through the use of subsea cables buried under the sediment. The study notes that this carbon stock concept is commonly overlooked and should be considered with new blue energy technology and deployment. But why am I talking about technology that is not ocean current turbines? This is because ocean current turbines are still prototypes. It's important to conduct research of potential environmental impacts, and the best way to do that is through parallel analysis. It is always better to be proactive instead of reactive. Don't wait for problems to arise. Find out what could go wrong and be prepared. So, going back to collision risk assessments, one study indicates that while foraging fish collisions were not observed, jellyfish, plant matter such as seaweed, and debris was observed. It has also been noted that due to the flow rate and density of the water, the turbines would spin at a much slower velocity and would inherently lower the risk of collision. Expanding the concept of offshore wind farm alterations to commercial fishing efforts through exclusion and rerouting, it is important to note that this has the potential to lead to catch per unit effort increase, differences in catch size, and an increase in bycatch. The study continues by listing 5 factors for pelagic fish in the environment where structures exist. These factors include refugee from predators, concentrated prey, spatial orientation, indicator of environmentally beneficial conditions, and increased encounter potential for feeding or mating. A key aspect for OCTs is that the maximum electrical power produced is most optimal when the device is perpendicular to the flow. Maintaining the orientation is vital in maximizing output on this kite-like turbine. So, to control its location in the water, it must be able to move into depths where temporal variations are maximum. To achieve this, a study on the real-time management of marine current turbine system suggests a hybrid control strategy. This strategy would allow tracking reference signals and speed regulation in order to ensure synchronization. So, while this table is interesting and important, it's a bit excessive and covers far beyond OCTs. However, it's still important to show how these environmental stressors from a variety of perspectives, including OCTs, interact with each other. This continues to highlight the need for comparative analysis on new technology. Looking at the social economic impacts of OCTs, there are a few things to consider. Regarding the shipping routes and commercial fishing impacts I mentioned, these turbines would reside in international waters. A study conducted on the socio-economic, legal, and political context of offshore renewable energies suggested consulting the International Maritime Organization, also known as the IMO, to approve project proposals. Additionally, the study further supports IMO authorization to help create a stronger legal case in terms of publicity and compliance for sea lanes and maritime traffic. When looking at the local economy, while there are a lot of benefits, there is an idea of "not in my backyard," which can be seen as a threat to livelihood and interests of the local community. An example is a small-town fisherman that is now excluded from an area where he gets most of his catch. Alternatively, the fish may have shifted elsewhere, creating a less productive fishing ground. As seen in a study regarding fishery management with ocean renewable energy sources, ecosystem shifts of predators may contribute to the increased depredation in and around offshore structures for both recreational fishing and commercial fisheries. It was suggested to encourage affected parties to participate in meaningful decision-making processes. So what's happening in Florida? Well, the FAU prototype socioeconomic factors, like $25 million in funding, access to major ports, Lake Worth municipal utility grid connections, and support from the Southeast National Marine Renewable Energy Center, also known as SNMRC, make the Palm Beach location ideal. Additionally, both institutions have already achieved securing the first U.S. offshore marine energy lease, conducting its extensive turbine tests and research, performing environmental assessments, and influencing policy. The end goal of this project is to improve competitiveness in marine technology, encourage domestic manufacturing, and create jobs while helping to achieve national energy goals. SNMREC hopes to create a blue energy cluster in Southeast Florida that covers all aspects of utility-scale ocean current energy projects, which includes turbine development, undersea cables, and marine services. A lot of the pros of blue energy are interconnected. Some of these pros are abundance and accessibility. Ocean currents traverse the globe, where water covers 70% of the planet. Offshore power provides the opportunity to deliver locally generated and reliable power, allowing offshore devices to receive renewable energy. Large energy potential. The ocean itself is full of energy, from the currents to the tides and even hydrothermal potential. Predictable and stable energy sources. The predictability and stability make it well suited for stabilizing intermittent renewable energy sources, like solar, where the sun doesn't always shine. Disaster recovery. This technology offers resilient energy solutions in a sustainable and reliable manner in post-disaster relief. Coastal and rural community support. Blue energy has the potential to address the water and energy requirements of these coastal and rural island communities. Low carbon footprint. During operation, there is minimal greenhouse gas emissions and reduced carbon emitting dependence. Lastly is climate change mitigation. Going hand in hand with low carbon footprint, the International Energy Agency projects that on a global scale, ocean energy can contribute to a 500 million ton reduction of carbon in the time span of about 30 years. Similar to how the pros were all interconnected with each other, we see the same situation in the cons, starting with high costs. Cost disparity reinforces perceived financial risks, making it hard to bring in investors and secure insurance coverage. Technological development. This technology is still in the early stages and requires further research and innovation to enhance efficiency and reliability. Infrastructure. Exposure to harsh weather conditions, natural wear and tear, maintenance, and grid connections creates significant hurdles in widespread deployment and long-term viability of the physical system. Maintenance and reliability. Servicing ocean energy devices is a complex task within marine conditions, which demands a robust maintenance strategy with reliable components for optimal performance. Regulatory challenges. Since the ocean, coastal, and local infrastructure lies within federal and state entities, regulatory procedures can be very time-consuming and costly. Variety across regions. What works and is acceptable in one country or region may not be in another. Grid integration. Integrating ocean energies into an existing power grid would require advanced energy storage solutions and efficient grid management plans. Lastly, environmental effects. As I had discussed throughout this presentation, there are several environmental impacts to note. In summary, an ocean current turbine uses deep ocean currents such as the Gulf Stream as a renewable energy source. Since this technology is still in the prototype stages, it's important to conduct research of environmental, social, and economic impacts of this technology by analyzing what currently exists. It's always better to be proactive instead of reactive. Overall, the benefits of this energy source is promising, bears the potential for greenhouse gas reductions, and a large and consistent energy source. While costs, infrastructure, and technology remain large hurdles to overcome, this prototype stage provides time to grow and develop in the meantime. Thank you for listening to my presentation.